Greetings, friends of stories woven from starlight and sorrow. Tonight, we will depart from the noisy battles of Olympus to enter a whispered tale, a legend of love, doubt, and the journey of a human soul who dared to face the gods themselves. This is the story of Psyche and Eros. In a mortal kingdom where kings built fortresses and farmers sowed seeds of hope, there lived a princess named Psyche. She was not merely beautiful. The beauty of her two sisters could be praised in poems and carved into statues, but Psyche's beauty was something different. It did not belong to this world. It was like moonlight filtering through leaves, like the silence of a newly fallen snowflake, a beauty that made one hold their breath, filled with both admiration and a little fear. Rumors of her spread like the wind. People no longer made pilgrimages to the temples of Aphrodite, the goddess of love and beauty. Why travel so far when a living goddess walked among them? The statues of Aphrodite began to gather dust. The garlands for her withered on the altars. Instead, people scattered flowers on the path Psyche walked. They knelt and prayed to her, seeing her as a new incarnation of love. But for Psyche, this worship was a golden prison. She was profoundly lonely. Men looked at her as a work of art, a relic, not a woman of flesh and blood. No one dared to propose. No one dared to touch her hand. No one dared to look into her eyes and see a soul yearning to be loved, not worshipped. Her beauty had become a curse, an invisible wall separating her from the world. On Olympus, the mortals' indifference did not escape the notice of Aphrodite. The goddess felt not just offended, she felt her power was being challenged. Jealousy, cold and sharp as a shard of ice, gripped her heart. "A mere mortal dares to steal my worship," she hissed, and all of Olympus seemed to tremble. "She will pay," and she called for her son, Eros. Make no mistake, this was no chubby little cherub with cute wings. Eros was a primordial god, powerful and dangerous. He was the embodiment of passion, of a burning desire that could build empires and also burn them to the ground. His arrows did not bring gentle love. They brought obsession, madness, and incurable fever. Aphrodite's command was clear and cruel. "Go find that girl, Psyche. Use your arrow and make her fall in love with the most hideous, vile creature on earth. Let her beauty be bound to a monster, so she becomes a laughingstock for the entire world." Eros, ever the dutiful son, accepted the command. Under the cloak of night, he flew to Psyche's chamber. He saw her sleeping, the candlelight flickering across her face like starlight on a still lake. She was even more beautiful than the rumors claimed. And as Eros, the god who had sown love into thousands of hearts, looked at her, his own heart skipped a beat. He raised one of his arrows, ready to carry out his orders. But in a moment of being mesmerized by her beauty, his hand trembled. The sharp arrowhead grazed his own skin. Just a tiny scratch, a drop of divine blood no one saw. But it was enough. The god of love had fallen victim to his own power. He was in love. In that moment, fate shifted. Eros was no longer his mother's weapon. He would become Psyche's silent protector. But this love was forbidden. If Aphrodite found out, the punishment would be terrible. Not just for him, but for the mortal girl he loved. Eros vanished before Psyche awoke, but her life was forever changed. No more suitors came. The kingdom began to whisper of a curse. Her father in desperation sought the oracle of Apollo, and the prophecy was cruel. "Psyche will not marry a mortal. She is destined for a monster, a creature so feared even the gods tremble. Dress her in a wedding gown, take her to the mountaintop, and leave her there." The kingdom was plunged into mourning, but Psyche, with a strange sense of calm, accepted her fate. She was tired of the loneliness within her beauty. Perhaps a monster was better than no one at all. She was taken to the desolate mountaintop. As her family left, she stood alone, waiting for her monster. But instead of a roar, a gentle, warm breeze, Zephyr, the west wind, lifted her up and carried her across the valleys. She landed in a lush meadow, before a palace more magnificent than anything she had ever seen, built of ivory and silver, glittering in the sun. She timidly stepped inside. No one was there, but everything was prepared for her. Invisible voices whispered a welcome. Invisible hands bathed her, dressed her in splendid robes, and served her a lavish feast. This was the home of her monster. That night, as darkness fell, a deep, gentle voice spoke beside her. It was her husband. He came to her in the darkness, and their love blossomed through conversations, gentle touches, a profound intimacy that needed no light. Psyche quickly fell in love with her invisible husband. He was intelligent, witty, and incredibly kind. She no longer cared if he was a monster, but there was one rule, one vow he made her promise. My love, never try to see my face. The day you see me, I must leave you forever. Psyche agreed. She trusted him. Her love was enough, but loneliness still crept in. She missed her family, her sisters. She begged her husband to let them visit. Eros, though he knew the danger, loved her too much to refuse. He warned her, "They will pour poison in your ears. Do not listen to them." Psyche's sisters were brought by the west wind. When they saw their sister's wealth and happiness, jealousy rose like venom. "You've never seen your husband's face?" one asked with false concern. "How do you know he isn't a giant serpent, fattening you up to eat you? A real monster?" Those words, like poisonous seeds, were planted in Psyche's mind. Doubt began to sprout. As the sisters left, they gave her an oil lamp and a dagger. "See for yourself," they whispered. "It's for your own safety." That night, Psyche could not sleep. Love and doubt tore at her soul. Finally, human curiosity won. She silently slipped out of bed, holding the lit lamp. Her heart pounded. She tiptoed to the bed, raising the lamp high. The light fell upon the sleeping face. She gasped. It was not a monster. It was the most beautiful man she had ever seen. More beautiful than any god. Golden curls, lips slightly curved in sleep. And on his back were feathered wings, shimmering like white gold. It was Eros, the god of love himself. Tears streamed down her face, not of fear, but of guilt. He had loved her, trusted her, and she had betrayed that trust. She leaned closer, wanting to place a kiss of apology on his lips. But in her emotion, a drop of hot oil fell from the lamp onto Eros' shoulder. He awoke with a start, not from the burn, but from a betrayal 1,000 times more painful. His eyes flew open, filled with hurt. "Psyche," he whispered, his voice shattered. "Love cannot exist where there is no trust." And then he flew away. The magnificent palace, the invisible servants, the enchanted garden, all vanished like a dream. Psyche found herself kneeling alone on a cold, barren hill, the extinguished lamp still in her hand. She had won the love of a god and lost it for a single moment of doubt. Heartbroken, but her spirit unbroken, Psyche wandered the earth, searching for her lost love. Finally, in desperation, she decided to face the source of all her suffering, Aphrodite. She went to the goddess's temple and begged for forgiveness. Aphrodite, both furious and gloating, looked at her with contempt. "You want my son back?" she sneered. "Very well, but the love of a god is not cheap. You must prove you are worthy." And so began the impossible tasks. First, Aphrodite took her to a vast storeroom where millions of seeds, wheat, millet, beans, poppies, were mixed together. "Sort them by sunset," the goddess commanded. Psyche was in despair, but an army of ants, moved by her love, crawled out and helped her complete the task. Aphrodite was angry, but continued. The second task: fetch a tuft of golden wool from a flock of ferocious rams, ready to gore anyone who came near. A reed by the river whispered to Psyche, advising her to wait until the rams were asleep and gather the wool snagged on the thorny bushes. She succeeded again. The third task was even more terrifying. Fetch water from the river Styx, the river of death, which flowed on an unclimbable cliff guarded by dragons. As Psyche thought she would die, an eagle of Zeus swooped down, took the flask from her hand, filled it with water, and returned it to her. Aphrodite was nearly mad with rage. Only one final task remained, one she was sure Psyche would never return from. Go down to the underworld, she commanded. Go to Queen Persephone and ask for a little of her beauty in this box for me. Your existence has exhausted me. It was a death sentence, but Psyche was no longer afraid. She had learned to walk through darkness. Guided by a talking tower, she found the entrance to the underworld. She carried coins for Charon, the ferryman, and honey cakes for Cerberus, the three-headed hound. She reached the throne of Persephone, the queen of the underworld, perhaps understanding the madness of love. Agreed. She gave Psyche a small, sealed box. But remember, Persephone warned, never open it. Psyche thanked her and began her journey back. She was almost back in the sunlight, but curiosity, her old enemy, rose once more. Just a peek, she told herself. A little of this beauty might make me worthy of Eros. She opened the box, but inside was not beauty. It was the sleep of the dead, a cold mist that enveloped her. Psyche collapsed, motionless as a statue, on the threshold of the living world. But love, ladies and gentlemen, has wings. Eros, his wound healed, and unable to bear his beloved's suffering any longer, defied his mother's anger and flew to find her. He found her lying there, cold and still. He gently brushed the deathly slumber away from her, trapped it back in the box, and then he kissed her. That kiss was not just a kiss. It was a promise, a forgiveness, an affirmation that their love was stronger than death. Psyche awoke, and the first arms she reached for were his. Eros held her tight and flew straight to Olympus. He knelt before the throne of Zeus and told the whole story. Their love, Psyche's trials, her unshakable perseverance. The gods were silent, moved. Zeus, the king of the gods, smiled. A mortal who has endured all this for love, he decreed. She is no longer mortal. She deserves immortality. Zeus gave Psyche a cup filled with ambrosia, the drink of the gods. She drank it, and a warm light filled her body. She had become a goddess. Aphrodite, though reluctant, had to accept it. A grand wedding was held on Olympus. Psyche, the mortal girl once cursed for her beauty, was now the goddess of the soul. And from her love with Eros, a daughter was born, named Hedone, which means pleasure. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the story of Psyche. Her journey teaches us that true love is not an easy gift. It must be tested. It must face doubt. It must walk through the darkness of despair. But a persistent soul, Psyche, when guided by love, Eros, can overcome any trial, and in the end, find eternal pleasure. It is not just a myth. It is a truth whispered in every beat of the human heart.